The history of the Jews goes back nearly 4,000 years, so today we're going to do a little time travel. Hold on to your seats. Welcome to Lion from Zion. I'm Ari, a Jew living in Jerusalem, and on this channel I tell you about the Jewish people. And what better place to start in understanding the Jews than with a quick recap of our long and unique history. Now, before you say, I already know the history, or history is boring, we're talking about key points in the formation of our identity that most people overlook, so you're bound to get something out of this. And what could be boring about a history filled with prophecy, divine intervention, destruction, and redemption? Before we get started, just a quick reminder to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos. And if you'd like to support the project, please click the link in the description below. Monthly support gives you access to various perks, including exclusive videos. While the Jewish Bible, or Tanakh, which is the central text in Judaism, is not a history book and is not meant to be viewed as such, it does record much of the ancient history of my people. Today, we'll look at Jewish history based on those records that have been carefully passed down for thousands of years. In future videos, I hope to talk about the archaeological finds that increasingly support the biblical narrative, so this is a great way to start delving into our history. The very first Jew was none other than Abraham, who lived roughly 3,800 years ago. That's a long time ago. Just to add some perspective, George Washington, who is generally considered the founding father of America, was born in 1732, over 3,500 years after Abraham. The Kingdom of England was unified in the 10th century, almost 2,800 years after Abraham. In other words, we Jews have been around for a while. We first find Abraham and his wife Sarah living in Ur of the Chaldees, which corresponds to the area of modern-day Iraq, and later they moved to Haran, which is in the area of modern-day Turkey. In a world filled with polytheism, Abraham was the first to recognize the one true God, and Judaism is the first monotheistic religion. Not only did Abraham recognize God, he also had direct communication with him. As related in the Bible in Genesis 12, 1-2, 7, Abraham received the following prophetic message from God. Lech lecha ma'artzecha u'mimoladetecha u'mibeit avicha el ha'artz asher areka. Ve'escha legoy gadol, ve'avrechecha ve'gadla shmecha ve'heye bracha. Lezarecha eten et ha'artz hazot. Go forth from your land and from your homeland and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation and bless you, and I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will assign this land to your offspring. God commanded Abraham to move to the land of Israel, which was called Canaan at the time, and promised that his descendants would become a nation, fulfilling a special spiritual role in the world. God also promised to give the land of Israel to the Jews. But if you know anything about Jewish history, you know it wasn't all smooth sailing. After arriving in Israel, Abraham and Sarah had to undergo several difficult tests before finally giving birth to their son Isaac. Isaac married Rebekah and in turn had a son named Jacob, who later received the name Israel. Jacob married Rachel and Leah, and his 12 sons all followed their father's spiritual path, and their descendants went on to become the 12 tribes of Israel. Jacob and his sons were forced to go down to Egypt due to a famine in Israel, and their population grew greatly there, until eventually they were made into slaves by Pharaoh and found themselves in a truly awful situation. But again, if you know anything about Jewish history, you know that when things seem darkest, God steps in to save us. It was at this time that God appeared to Moses, a Jew who was raised in Pharaoh's palace, and commanded him to tell Pharaoh and the Jews that God was going to redeem the Jews and bring them back to Israel. Moses and his brother Aaron spread the word, and God brought down 10 supernatural plagues on Egypt, rescuing the Jews from slavery. The Jews left Egypt as a free people. Crossing through the desert on their way to Israel, the Jews were given the 10 Commandments by God in a divine revelation at Mount Sinai. It was here that the entire people heard God speaking to them, and tradition teaches that all Jews, including those not yet born, were present at Sinai. Thus, we had it proven to us beyond any doubt that prophecy, direct communication with God, is indeed possible. And we have preserved the testimony of this core event from generation to generation ever since, for the past 3,300 years or so. Note that from the first moment of having our national identity as a free people established by leaving Egypt, this Jewish identity was connected with a spiritual and moral mission. In receiving the 10 Commandments, the Jews sealed a covenant with God and entered a special relationship with Him. I hope to talk about the often misunderstood concept of the chosen people in an upcoming video, so be sure not to miss it. It is completely unique that from the very beginning, Jewish identity contains a national aspect of peoplehood and a religious aspect of spirituality and belief, and these two are united. By comparison, if someone is Buddhist, that indicates their religious identity but not their national identity. Chinese and Indians can both be Buddhists and often are. Saying someone is Christian or Muslim likewise only indicates their religious identity but not their national identity. In a more unusual example, Shinto is a Japanese religion, but obviously not all Japanese are Shintoists, and non-Japanese can become Shintoists, but doing so does not make them Japanese. Members of the same national identity often have different religious identities, and vice versa, because the two identities are usually separate. But when you say someone is a Jew, that indicates both a religious and national identity, regardless of the extent to which they embrace all aspects of that identity. Because it's a religious identity, it is possible for a non-Jew to go through a proper conversion and become a Jew just like any native-born Jew. And since it's also a national identity, fundamentally a Jew cannot stop being a Jew, and therefore they do not need to convert in order to come back to their faith if they've left it. We've still got several thousand years of history to go, so let's get back to it. After leaving Egypt and receiving the Ten Commandments, the Jews underwent various tests and crossed the desert. In the end, Moses passed away and left behind the Torah that he received from God, containing the laws by which the nation could realize God's will in the world. Now led by Joshua, the Jews entered the land of Israel that was promised to their ancestors and them by God, and conquered the land, establishing this country approximately 3,300 years ago. During the first period of Jewish statehood in Israel, we were led by the judges, but later the people demanded a king. Saul was appointed the first king, but only reigned a few years before David took the throne around 3,000 years ago, starting the Davidic dynasty of Jewish kingship. David's son Solomon built the first temple in Jerusalem, a place where the Jews served God and where all peoples of the world could come to be close to God. But the kingdom split in the time of Solomon's son into the kingdom of Judah in the south and the kingdom of Israel in the north. A few hundred years later, in 586 BCE, this period of Jewish monarchy came to a violent end with the Babylonian exile, which we understand was a punishment meant to rectify the sins that led to it. Israel was occupied by the Babylonian Empire, and the temple was destroyed, with most of the Jews being forced to leave for Babylon. 70 years later, the Jews were able to return to Israel and rebuild the second temple, but to a large extent, we were unable to fully take back our independence and sovereignty as before. Eventually, Israel was occupied again, this time by the Roman Empire, and in 70 CE, the second temple was destroyed. Over 1 million Jews were murdered by the Romans, and the majority of those remaining were later forced into exile, scattered throughout the nations. But the Romans didn't stop there. In an attempt to erase the memory of Israel and the Jews, they renamed the land of Israel Palestina. This was a rendering of the Greek word Philistia, indicating the small coastal area that was previously occupied by the Philistines, the old seafaring invader enemies of the Jews who originated in Greece and didn't even exist anymore by the time of the Romans. Throughout the long exile of the Jews, no other independent country was ever established in the land of Israel, and the Jews constantly yearned and prayed to return to their homeland. While a small number of Jews remained in Israel from that time until now, most of us found ourselves wandering through the Middle East, North Africa, and Europe. At the start of these difficult conditions in the first centuries of the exile, the Jewish religious leaders known as rabbis wrote down the oral Torah, as the Mishnah and the Talmud. This was in order to preserve the ancient teachings accompanying the Tanakh that guide us in living as Jews and observing the commandments, teachings that had been passed down by word of mouth until then. It was during the exile that both Christianity and Islam arose, with empires of each faith occupying Israel. Both religions adopted various concepts from Judaism while changing them in fundamental ways, and both claimed to be replacements of Judaism. For this reason, followers of both religions frequently subjected the Jews to severe persecution. As a result, the world's Jewish population, that was approximately 12 million at the start of the exile, dropped to just around 1 million and remained there for much of the exile. But then, at the end of the 18th century and into the 19th century, large numbers of Jews began returning to Israel. At the same time, the world's Jewish population began to dramatically rise, until the horrific tragedy of 6 million Jews being murdered in the Holocaust during World War II. Following this genocide, the Jews were finally able to re-establish their state in Israel in 1948, reviving our independent statehood in our ancient homeland 2,534 years after the first temple was destroyed. Since then, Israel has been subjected to countless wars of survival while outnumbered and outgunned. And these wars continue today, but miraculously, we have come out victorious every time and the land continues to thrive and prosper. From my perspective, this is all nothing short of an open miracle and a clear fulfillment of ancient prophecy. As we look back, we see several unique points in Jewish history. While many large nations have persecuted the Jews since ancient times and even committed or attempted to commit mass slaughter against us, the Jews have always survived, while those large nations were the ones to disappear. Ancient Egypt, Babylon, Persia, Rome, various empires of Christianity and Islam, and Nazi Germany all followed the same path. It goes without saying that there's no precedent in human history for our survival in exile and national redemption. Doesn't that make you even more curious about the Jewish people? We have skimmed through approximately 3,800 years of Jewish history. Obviously, this was nothing more than a simple overview, but hopefully it lets you know a little about our unique story. That's it for today. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. Be sure to hit the like button and click subscribe and the notification bell so you don't miss our next one.